Hey everyone, welcome to the ATDev Podcast. So happy to be joined today by Lisie Lillianfeld, Product Manager at Google. Hey Lisie, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, yeah. Thank you for being here and thank you for all the amazing work you've done. And it'd be great if we could just start out by introducing yourself and talking about your role at Google and what brought you into the accessibility space.
Sure. So I'm Lisie. I have been at Google almost 11 years. I joined as an engineer and I have since switched into product management. I currently work in Android and I started working in a back-end technical role, and it was technically an interesting space, but I realized that what was motivating for me was to work on features where I could see the impact on real human beings. I wanted to see the impact in the lives of people. And on an infrastructure team, I was pretty far removed. Over the first few years at Google, I was able to pivot and I went from infrastructure to search. And I was like, okay, this is starting to get closer to users. I felt like I was still trying to find my niche. And I realized so part of it was impact on users, but part of it was also finding something that I felt like had the impact that I wanted on my own growth and development. I felt like if I was just writing code for the sake of code or writing for if I was in a purely technical role, that I would become better at writing code, but not necessarily to become like a more multidimensional person. And that for me
Right.
personally, I wanted a role that would challenge how I could think about the world, how I would relate to other people. And so when I got an opportunity to work on accessibility, something clicked where I realized, oh, this is the kind of work that will have impact on other people and that I think will change myself for the better. And so
Right.
that's really exciting and motivating to get into accessibility for those reasons.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, and that's one of the core things about assistive technology is that it is, or I guess it can be, highly technical, but also it has a real tangible impact in people's lives. And I think that's one of the core things about the work that I've seen at Google and been a part of in the past is, trusted advisor programs, is that there is a lot of user-centered design that happens and really bringing the end user into the conversation early on because ultimately that makes for a better product and it makes the engineers' lives easier too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'd love if maybe you could talk a little bit more about those accessibility initiatives that you've been a part of at Google.
Yeah, I worked on a whole range of accessibility projects, starting in search, working on web accessibility, which is maybe what a lot of developers think of when they think of accessibility. They think about WCAG, they think about alt text, the kind
Yeah,
of compliance for screen reader compatibility. That was where I started. And for a lot of people, that's what they think. And then I branched out, I moved into the research organization and started doing AI right 5 years ago before generative AI, doing
hmm
a communication app for people with paralysis, and
yeah,
that
that
really
Project Euphonia.
exactly.
Yeah, that's still one of my favorite
Yeah.
accessibility projects. So
Oh,
cool.
it's
Yeah,
so much fun.
yeah. Maybe we could just spend a minute talking about that because I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, so Euphonia was great because to make the distinction here, the web accessibility kind of legal compliance accessibility side of things is making general purpose products usable for people with disabilities. And
Right.
Project Euphonia falls on the assistive technology side of technology that is specifically designed for people with disabilities. And so I've
Yeah.
worked on both sides of that. And Euphonia, it was a project to help people with speech impairments be better understood. And it had multiple branches, better speech understanding for people who do speak, who have dysarthria, and then Project Activate, an app for people who do not speak to be able to communicate using facial gesture.
Yeah. Yeah. So I use that directly. I have always had a problem not being able to make phone calls
Mhm.
from bed. And so the way I was using Project Euphonia was I set up it to recognize me, basically just making a grunting sound, because
Uh-huh.
when I have my CPAP mask on, that's really the only noise I can make that's intelligible. And so I set that up to trigger it to make a phone call to my caregiver if I needed something. Worked really great.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was pre-AI craze. I think that's a really cool example of training data on really hyper-specific, non-standard user vocal sounds.
Yeah, exactly. And then since then, I worked on accessibility features for people with limited dexterity, with dyslexia. And then most recently, I was working on TalkBack, which is the screen reader. It's how blind people use Android devices. And so it
Oh,
reads out everything that's on the screen, which until recently had been a very kind of robotic process that it would read every single element out in order across the whole screen, which was it was complete, but it wasn't necessarily prioritized. It wasn't necessarily a natural experience. It's
interesting.
really struggled with images because if the alt
Right.
text wasn't there or wasn't good, the system couldn't understand. And so we shipped a whole bunch of AI features, starting with generated image descriptions and then also screen descriptions and giving users the ability to ask questions about what's on the screen. And the response to that was really good. So that was exciting to be able to bring AI to accessibility in a way that really made a difference for users.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think that's, a theme I've been seeing is that, certainly there is some negative publicity around AI and misuse, but I think for accessibility and assistive technology, there is really an immediate and direct benefit that AI has on improving some of these accessibility tools. And I'm really excited to see where this AI and accessibility trend is going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned TalkBack. I think there's so many other assistive aspects of Android, and I think the phone itself really is a piece of assistive technology. It helps people with disabilities be more independent and helps them have a income, a work. And you also mentioned a Gboard and some of the accessibility there. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, we actually just launched a subtle but useful accessibility feature in Gboard, font size scaling. On Android, you can change the size of the system font, but the keyboard, because it's so small, it historically did not scale according to your system font size. And we found a way to do that to make it
Mm.
more legible to users with low vision. So that was exciting, a little thing that we launched recently.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
but
that's
also in general, if you think about things like word prediction, word suggestion, swipe typing, all of these features are, even though right, they've become mainstream, but of course they're
yeah,
assistive by nature. And so they help people who have trouble with spelling or with dexterity. And that extends to people who have disabilities or people who are just distracted while they're typing or they have big thumbs or it really
yeah,
it's assistive across the board.
yeah, yeah. We've mentioned the curb cut so many times in this podcast. The curb cut was originally designed for people in wheelchairs, but the downstream benefits are delivery workers or parents with kids and strollers, or there's so many downstream benefits. And I think the on screen keyboard is a really great example of that. And honestly, I wish that a lot of the features that are in Android would move to Windows or Mac OS because the on screen keyboards on those platforms are literally decades behind. And so, yeah, at the end, I would really love to learn more about the process inside Google for making a product accessible.
Yeah, totally. Accessibility is an ongoing, continuous work for sure across all the products. And there's a couple of different sides to it, right? Part of it is the kind of compliance WCAG work of like
Hmm.
making sure that developers are putting alt text and making buttons clickable and all of that. And the innovation happening on that side is a lot of automation, more automated accessibility testing, more automated detection of, hey, you forgot to annotate this thing here. Historically, it's
Yeah,
been a really hard problem to educate developers on accessibility, only because there's so many things that they have to know, and they need to know about privacy and security and the
yeah,
details of their own domain. So then adding accessibility on top of it, right, it was just hard to develop that expertise across engineers really broadly. And so the more that we can automate it, make it plug and play, make it easy to check, it just helps developers move faster, and it helps the bugs actually get fixed and get fixed earlier. That's the other thing, catching it in
yeah,
the design phase and Figma. So that's the way that things have worked and are continuing to work on the compliance side for accessibility. And then in terms of accessibility innovation, I think we really look for the sweet spot between the user need and the technology. So we
mm,
we listen to users, we hear what are their frustrations, what are their pain points, what are their needs, and then we hold that up against what is the technology newly enabling us to do that we couldn't do yesterday, and finding
hmm.
where those things meet.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And yeah, and I think you definitely hit on how important it is to bring users in early because that helps prevent a lot of problems from being created later on down the road if it just user research had been a little bit more thorough.
Yeah, and I'll just bring up a strategic point also, which is that accessibility is, by definition, for the edge of the bell curve, not the middle of the bell curve. That means that it's hard to tell a story around it being like a core business driver. And so part of my job when I'm leading an accessibility team is to try to identify and communicate the value of accessibility work to the core business.
Right,
And so sometimes that's telling the story about it, but a lot of times it's also about the technology and the innovation. The things that so many things, curb cut again, so many things developed for accessibility end up becoming mainstream.
yeah,
And oftentimes I'm listening for what are the strategic company level initiatives, what are the technologies that everybody's trying to figure out. Obviously, we're seeing this with AI. And then is there a way that we can actually prove it out in accessibility or be ahead of the curve or find a new application, right? A lot of times there are things that maybe somebody with a disability needs to automate or wants to automate earlier than like the general public would be willing to necessarily like seed control. And if you look a little bit further in the future, we see, oh, actually, probably everyone's going to want this. But a lot of
right.
times, maybe accessibility users are excited to pioneer something earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I had not really thought about it in that way, but yeah, that's totally true. Totally true. And yeah, I'm curious, how do you take, I guess it's under the umbrella of user research, if someone has an idea for something that could improve a Google product from a accessibility standpoint, yeah, how could that person go about getting involved and sharing their perspectives?
For somebody outside of Google?
Yes.
Yeah. So if google.com/accessibility has some information, including how to sign up to participate in accessibility research studies. So
Okay.
that's a way that people can try things early on and voice their opinions.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I think that yeah, there's sometimes I think a disconnect between people I've seen in the disability community who are using Android, for example, every day, but don't necessarily realize that there's someone at the other end of their phone that is
You
actually developing.
I'll say we also, if a thread blows up on Reddit, we'll look at that. And people on Reddit are so mean. I've shipped things. And the people on Reddit are like, this is awful. But
Uh,
I like take a deep breath and it's okay. And then I read the feedback. And we
yeah,
actually do look at that kind of thing. Obviously, we can't read all of Reddit, but when something takes off and it starts circulating and it gets a lot of upvotes, that is one of the many signals that we use. Also, when people give feedback through, if you're like in a Google product and it's send feedback, right? That
mhm.
also we look at,
You actually read those?
yeah, every single one of them. I can't promise that. But themes come up and we start seeing the same thing over and over, or right, honestly, sometimes it's podcasts. Like when we get like that there's a buzz in the community about something, that information does get folded into our decision making.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so looking to the future a little bit, what are some upcoming trends or technologies that you see transforming accessibility?
Yeah. So I think the big one that I've seen demos about, right, external to Google as well, is what they're calling agentic AI, right? This is AI that
Mhm.
can do things, AI that can click buttons for you. And so I think across the board, beyond accessibility as well, we're seeing the possibility of using AI to go out and do things for you. So actually moving from a lot of assistive technology right now is at the level of move the mouse pointer. How do I move the
Mm,
mouse pointer? And then you're clicking on each thing individually. And actually moving to a world where clicking on buttons isn't the level that we're operating at anymore at all. We're really
yeah,
operating at a level much higher of goals and ideas. And what I want to do is complete a task, and actually AI is dealing with typing in the form fields and clicking buttons, and all the
yeah,
little steps are all abstracted away. So I think this is going to be absolutely transformative for assistive technology, and that
yeah,
users with disabilities will likely pioneer a lot of this, because one of the challenges with the technology right now is that it is slow. And so
yeah,
for a user who already is very efficient at using their devices, they probably, why would they wait around for the AI to do it for them if they could just do it tap 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 very quickly? But for users where there's more pain and friction to get things done, I think they're going to be more excited and willing to try these technologies early and maybe even influence how they develop.
yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting. And yeah, I think on a personal note, I've been using Windsurf and Cursor and now anti-gravity a lot. And it has really transformed my ability to code because for me, I'm not able to type, but I'm able to now use my voice to, as you said, communicate ideas and let the software do all of the typing, and it has dramatically improved my ability to code. Yeah, it's an exciting time to be in accessibility.
Very exciting.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Reese. And you mentioned google.com/accessibility. But yeah, and if people want to reach out and connect with you, or maybe just learn more, what's a good way to do that?
Sure, they can find me on LinkedIn if you look up Lisie Lillianfeld. I think there's only one of me. So, yes, feel free to reach out there.
Yes, there is only one of you, that's for sure. Thank you. Yes, all right. Well, thank you, Lacey, and thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share, and feel free to pass it along to someone else. And until next time, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Owen.